fantastic first day of the work week. My name is Dr. Sandra Colton-Medici, and I am not surprised at the stock market this morning. I wanted to definitely talk about this. The second thing, obviously, Pope Francis is dead at 88 years old. And the third thing that I wanted to most definitely talk about this morning is Pete Hegseth. One, I will get to that. But let's start out with the stock market. I actually was looking at some of the numbers this morning. I am not a stock market guru, but I can read a headline. Okay. This morning, the Dow tumbled 1,000 points. Hello to everybody who's joining me from abroad and from in the United States. I am so glad you're here. Check the description if you haven't already. I do a YouTube live in the mornings, Monday through Friday, and a Substack live in the evenings as well, Monday through Friday. I hope to see you at both. Normally, I try to give a rundown in the morning of what is actually happening and a wrap up in the evening of what went down in the day. So if you are joining me from anywhere in the world, I can't even talk. From anywhere in the world, please let me know where. Hey, Vivian, how are you? Happy Easter to you. We actually did some activities yesterday. We were reinforcing some French language with my two daughters and teaching them some words in French. Joyeuse Pâques, I think is how we say Happy Easter in French. We were learning about what is it called? Peeps. So peeps are those sort of marshmallowy, sugarized sort of Easter candy. And they were learning des bonbons for candy. And also, I think it was guimauve, I think is how you say basically these sort of peeps in French is like marshmallows, right? Anyways, so we were doing that. But let's talk about a few things. I have a few screenshots just to pull up so that you can see what we are talking about this morning. And these may not go in any particular order because I just was screenshotting this morning before coming on. So this is the headline this morning, which obviously after, the day after Easter is devastating for those who are part of this particular religious world. Even if you're not religious, I think that the Pope dying is significant, right? The fact that JD Vance apparently was like the last official visit for Pope Francis. I've seen so many random TikToks this morning about, did he kill him? Like, obviously not, because this man was in poor health. And he made it to Easter. He made it into the Pope Mobile for this like surprise visitation. I just think, my God, the world like had its way with this man. Like he was just hanging on by a thread. And thank God he met with, this sort of parishioners in a sort of broad spectrum up until his final day yesterday. It's so sad. I actually saw the news. What is it called? Around midnight or so, or 1 o'clock in the morning was when it actually came through. And this, I mean, obviously he's 88. He was 88. He led a fulfilled life. But it reminded me that the next part of this, beyond the mourning and the people, coming in to pay their respects, we recently just saw this movie that had been nominated for the Oscars called Conclave. If you haven't watched Conclave, this is the next sort of proceedings that will happen to choose a new pope. Obviously, Conclave is very dramatized and there's a whole other storyline behind it. But if you want to get a little bit more of a glimpse into how they actually choose a new pope, this is a good movie to watch just to kind of see how they vote until they vote until they vote in a new person. So bringing in all of the sort of cardinals, I believe, from around the world, and I might be mistaken if I'm choosing the wrong word there. But yeah, that's a whole other process that's going to happen for choosing another pope. Thank you so much to whoever gave me some likes already. I really appreciate it. Any information that you want to share about your experience, either watching the Pope speak, visiting the Vatican, obviously these are very emotional experiences for a lot of people who are, religious and or who just find this sort of solace, this sort of calmness about someone of his stature in the world. bringing people together, calling out atrocities, being very humanitarian, all of these things that kind of the Pope embodies. Um, this is something that a lot of people are going to kind of grapple with, his sort of impact. And you can see the headline, this sort of sub headline here: the voice for the poor and the environment struggle to overcome the church's deep division and sex abuse crisis. So this obviously, not only is he a sort of figure in the religious world, but his sort of uh, impact when it comes to sustainability, science, um, marriage and equality, and the history of abuse within certain religious institutions is something that I think a lot of popes would say is the hardest thing to combat and come back from because of so many allegations. Anyway, so this is this is what a lot of people are waking up to this morning, the passing of the Pope, which is something that obviously, if you are religious and you went to church yesterday and you were doing your sort of Easter respects, this is devastating to wake up to. Vivian said he better stay home. Yes, JD Vance being the last official visit for the Pope and then the Pope dying is just, it is like, I saw somebody make a TikTok and they said, season 47 of the United States, whoever's writing it needs to stop because this is something you can't even make this up. It's so egregious. All right, so let's go to this, which I think is something else that is really, how do you say, it continues to be in the forefront, and rightfully so. Amy Klobuchar, I believe is her first name, Klobuchar, argues Abrego Garcia's fight is the Trump administration's distraction from the economy. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, obviously, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he is still in El Salvador. Now, according to Senator Van Hollen, he has been, I don't know, moved from Secot. I'm not sure exactly where he has been moved to. Robin, we are talking right now. We were just talking about the Pope. Now we're talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but this particular person here, I believe she is a senator, she's talking about the distraction technique of using immigration and migrants and undocumented people and this sort of transfer of Kilmar Abrego Garcia along with the other, I believe like 230 or so people to El Salvador as Donald Trump's very, very brazen attempt to basically tell you the economy is doing okay, because now we can talk about something else because the economy is not at the forefront. But like I said at the top, stocks dropped 1,000 points this morning. So do not let this sort of distraction take you away from the fact that this is a reality, whether or not you are hearing it from his mouth, that the economy is tanking under his supervision. Navy SEAL, how are you? I see you said, yo. Well, so Robin asks, but do you think illegals should be deported? So I'm not going to call them illegals. I think that there are people who are in the United States and they are undocumented people. Now, whether or not they should be deported, I think everybody should have due process. That's my opinion. And the judge, in certain cases, would make that determination of whether or not they should be deported. Some people come here seeking asylum. Some people, like, they have certain protected status. I think there is an overarching narrative here of getting people out. And instead of basically going through the court system where we should all have due process, Donald Trump is trying to skirt that and kind of get around the Constitution. Web3V has a different opinion than me, which is totally fine. Web3V says that Donald Trump saved the world. Now, I can't imagine him saving the world because we are going down like, hell in a handbasket. So I don't think that's true. But you can agree to disagree with me. Let's see, if they sneaked past security to get there, I'm sure that's illegal. So if you want to follow the law, there are civil offenses and then there are criminal offenses. So when we all have to follow the law, this is what we do as people who are in the United States, then we have to follow it according to the law for everyone. Okay, so we can call into this process, the due process, for everyone, not just for the people that we think we like. That's kind of my stance on it. And so if someone does not do the right thing and come here the right way, which is what a lot of people have said is the problem, we have to then kind of come back to this Kilmar Abrego Garcia and how he had protective status. And if you are doing the check-ins with your immigration officer or whatever, then if that's the case, then the argument that you're talking about doesn't really hold up, because he was then taken even though he had protective status. So the due process for everyone should definitely matter. Vivian says, oh, good Lord. Oh, my God. Why do borders exist? I mean, I would say, there are a lot of, if you look at the United States, we have like state borders, but there's no real check-ins. Now, I used to live in Las Vegas, and I would come from Las Vegas and I would come down to Los Angeles. And there is a sort of checkpoint, but they're really checking for food. It's like an agricultural inspection that goes between states there, because, there's a lot of agriculture that happens in California. And they don't want, I would say, foods that are going to potentially have different kinds of maybe bugs that are associated with those foods, or even soil or anything like this that is going to contaminate the food industry, the agricultural industry in California. So they're always doing these sort of food inspections. Okay, so Robin says, you just cherry pick questions that fit your narrative. Actually, I'm answering the questions that you're asking, so I'm not really cherry picking. I'm trying to get to everything that is listed. So if you will be patient with me, I'll try to get to everything that you're talking about. As far as the borders existing, another example that I was going to give is not just here in the United States, but when my husband and I were living in France, we went to Switzerland. And we went to Geneva, and we got on the train, and we got on this high-speed train, and we went to Geneva. And we didn't have a checkpoint when we got to Geneva. We got off the train. There was a checkpoint there, but there was no one there to man the checkpoint. So when it came to that particular border, that was a completely different country, right? We went from France to Switzerland, and there was no one there to check our bags, no one there to check us as, were we citizens, of Switzerland? Absolutely not. No one was there to check our passports. No one was there to stamp a passport. Like, no one would have known that we were in Switzerland, like, at all. So that's an interesting sort of situation between borders. You asked, why do we have borders? Some countries have some friendly exchanges to the point where there was no actual like TSA or customs immigration checkpoint when we went from France to Switzerland, specifically Geneva, and that was on the train. So there's a lot that I would say goes into how people are perceiving borders. Now, we could say there's a massive border along the southern border, and there's a massive for the United States, one along the Canadian border. But there's a lot of, I would say, territory that is not manned, so to speak. I think I saw an article that Donald Trump was going to be sending some sort of troops to kind of guard the border recently. Dark Bunny says, hello, beautiful. Hello. I'm trying to go back on some of these comments because as I was talking, there was a lot coming in. All right, so Sean Kelly Jr. said, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The Constitution literally says, quote, no person, not just American citizens. That's the Fifth Amendment. And that's what I think I was talking about earlier, which is due process. Now, a lot of these people, whether or not they are criminals or whether or not we see them as coming here the right way, should definitely have their day in court. And that is to either challenge whatever they're being charged with, prove whatever it is that they need to prove, like pull out their birth certificate or whatever it is that they're being asked to do, and have that day. Now, then the government can say, we have seen whatever it is that you are, purporting to be true, and we don't agree with you, or we do agree with you. And that, whether it's by a judge and jury or just a judge, there's a lot that goes into which, scenario that's going to be. But then there's a ruling, and then you can move on with, wherever they're going to move people to. I actually wanted to bring up something really important, which is I don't think that they should be deporting people to countries that don't know that they're coming. like I feel like there's this sort of third country that people are going to start being deported to or being sent to, where they have no affiliation with that country and no sort of history in that country. And that's going to be a very horrible experience for people who are experiencing that. I like if they start transferring US citizens to random countries where they've never lived in their entire life, I think that's going to be the weirdest situation I can ever imagine. Okay, let me move down. Richard Andrew Crosby, thank you so much for putting in facts. Yay. Robin, I'm coming back to you. That's European Union. There is no border between France and Swiss, like there is no border between Nevada and California. Absolutely. I mean, technically there is a line. Obviously, there's a line, but there's nobody manning the borders. Obviously, you are correct there. Let's see. Sean Kelly says, we have an executive that is trying to overtly circumnavigate the very foundation of democracy, and we think it's a distraction. Absolutely a distraction from this, which is what I'm coming back to. The economy and the stock market tanking this morning 1,000 points. I'm sure it's going to go up and down all day. And he will most likely say something that will trigger another jump in the stock market. And what it does is it creates this sort of uncertainty. Okay, if you haven't had a chance to, look at what's going on with like corporations, they can weather the storm. A lot of them can weather the storm. They might lose a lot of money, but they might have anticipated this sort of loss, right? Small businesses cannot. They're like, money is tight. They're going from one month to the next, and they're planning each and every, item that they're selling and sourcing and all of that. And not that corporations don't plan, but they have wiggle room, right? And that's where I feel like this sort of stock market, what I think is a market manipulation, and his billionaire buddies are making a lot of money while everyone else's 401ks are like, womp, 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 right? It is not a good look. And she's right. It is a big distraction from the economy. Talking about Abrego Garcia, which is very, very important because the Supreme Court already ruled 9-0 that this guy should be coming home. They should facilitate his bringing him back. And the administration is basically thumbing their nose in their face and saying, we don't really have this, we don't have any rule, we don't have any like wiggle room here. We don't have any authority to bring him back, which I would say, if you don't try, my mom says this, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Anyway, so let's go on. This one is the other big story, I would say, of the day. El Salvador's president, Bukele, right, offers Maduro, Venezuelan dictator, okay, who just kind of stole an election, he offers the U.S. deported Venezuelans in a prisoner swap. This is Bukele, okay, the one who said he's a cool dictator. I believe that's what he called himself. Now, if this was the plan the whole time, Marco Rubio, I'm thinking we need to have a conversation with Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, and the whole State Department, because if they knew that we were going to pay Bukele and El Salvador $6 million for these people to be transferred, who they are saying are part of this gang, to El Salvador, and then El Salvador was going to just get up and take these people and say, hey, but Maduro, we're gonna exchange these valuable prisoners, because now they they have value because he's using these people as bargaining chips. And we want to get these other people back in exchange. My biggest question about this is whether or not we get that $6 million back in addition to negotiating those people back, okay? Because ultimately they have never had their day in court as far as the due process that they deserve, which we talked about earlier with Sean Kelly, right? But that's the first one. The second one is, if he's allowed to just move people around and we're supposed to continuously supply this man with money to house the people that we've already sent him, but yet we don't know that he's actually keeping them, we're basically sending him money for nothing because he's getting paid to then house none of the people that we send him. So he makes out like a bandit because he is now getting the money, getting the people, exchanging them potentially to Maduro or whomever wants to buy them from him or exchange them for other people, but yet we are still paying? I have no idea how this is like the scenario of the day, but this is insane. This is insane, not only because they're not getting due process and they should have had that before ever being shipped anywhere, but two, that we're paying him to basically give away the people that we sent there. My mind is blown. Let me go down in the comments because I feel like I've missed a few. Okay, Richard Andrew Crosby, thank you so much for joining me because I missed you in here. Due process is what all people should receive. Let me go down. Benja and question later. Sorry, I think now you guys are going back and forth in the comments. I'm so sorry if I missed it. Is American Red Cross asylum? I'm not quite sure of the world. I'm not quite sure what your question is. American Red Cross, I believe, operates around the world, obviously, but I don't know what their role will be because I'm pretty sure they're a nonprofit, but I don't know how much of their money they have donated or any of the sort of resources, if those are actually from the U.S. government. Sean Kelly Jr. says it is happening right now. Let's see. Yes, Sean Kelly Jr. and Trump is floating the idea of homegrown going overseas. This is the other thing. Like I was saying, I don't understand how any U.S. citizen like myself could be shipped to another country that we've never been in, never been, maybe potentially don't even speak the language, do not have a chance to argue for our release, right? I mean, there's so many things. If U.S. citizens are going to be sent to random countries, it blows my mind. The other thing that came up when thinking about these homegrown people from the U.S. who may be sent to El Salvador is that maybe it's not the people that we automatically think will be sent. A lot of people think we're starting with the sort of Tren de Agua, I'm messing it up, I'm sure, gangs is what they're purported to be. But maybe they think that they're going to send the next gang members of like the Bloods and the Crips, right? But in my opinion, it is going to trickle down to motorcycle gangs. I think that the people who believe they are safe, these sort of like maybe potential I was trying to do some research like the Vagos and the Hells Angels and there's tons of motorcycle gangs that get into ruckus fights and brawls and things that have happened. And I'm not trying to paint the entire picture for these people as violent, but there have been some situations, right? And so if the sort of tattoo is the sort of marking of the gang, anybody who's been in these sort of tattoo parlors to get something of a remembrance, or maybe this is, I wanted to be affiliated at one point, but I got out of the gang. Like, what if there's people who were in the gang who are no longer in the gang, but you have the tattoo of the gang, right? And now you are deported because you have this sort of tattoo. A lot of people have said that the tattoos as being sort of the proof of his affiliation, that could be anybody. That could be anybody. Okay, I want to go back to the comments. Robin, I want to say, this is Robin saying, I want to say if somebody enters Pakistan illegally, for example, he would be arrested and persecuted by the law in that country. Why then America can't do that? I would say America can do that, but that still gives that person due process. their day in court. They are prosecuted, they are charged, they are prosecuted, they have a chance to defend themselves and say whatever it is that they need to say, and then the court will decide their fate. Instead of what Trump is doing, which is just basically saying, you're a bad guy, and I know you're a bad guy because I say you're a bad guy, even if nobody else knows you're a bad guy, and I'm not going to show any proof of that, because if I did that, I would be proving it in court. Right? I'm not going to show the evidence. I'm just going to ship you away, right? And that is not lawful under the Constitution. That's what we're saying here. All right. Let me keep going because I feel like there's so many comments, but I wanted to give you some more information. All right. This is something, and let me try to get out of the way so you can see this. So as far as Joyce Aileen, I think is how you say her name, she was a former lawyer. She said, I suspect this is going to show up in a variety of court pleadings. Whoever thought this was cute at the time may be a little less giddy when this becomes evidence of intent to disobey a court order. Now let me get out of the way so you can see. It's on the White House's, I believe it's the X account for the White House. It says, fixed it for you at New York Times. Oh, and by the way, at Chris Van Hollen, which is the senator from, I believe, Maryland, he's not coming back. And then they go in here down in the article headline to basically change the headline and say that this man is an MS-13 gang member. Okay, so a lot of what has come down from the court, this sort of 9-0 decision from the Supreme Court to facilitate his return, even if they facilitated his return, had him go to court, be able to go through the due process, and even if they sent him to somewhere else or held him, this process has to be had. Now, by them mocking the New York Times, the actual White House, okay? I don't know who the social media person is for the White House, but I would not want to be called in under subpoena to say, who told you to do this, right? Because the social media person isn't going to sit there and be like, I gotta go on, let's do this, right? They're going to do what they're told, most likely. Most likely. This whole thing, posting it, and then saying at Chris Van Hollen, he's not coming back, that's her right here, part of what becomes evidence of intent to disobey a court order. Yeah, because they know that if they can get Kilmar Abrego Garcia out of CCOT into a hotel for an interview, they can bring him back to the United States. It was another sort of showing of, if you ask, somebody might respond. Instead of doing nothing and just saying, oh, we can't do anything, right? The intent is there to keep him there instead of do what the court has ordered. Let me get back to the comments really quickly. Sean Kelly Jr. says, did you see their argument on his gang affiliation? Oh, yes, that because he wears a Chicago Bulls hat, he must be in a gang. There are so many things, you guys. There are so many things that just are not adding up. All right, let's go to here. Oh, this is what we were just talking about. Let's go to this one. Pete Hegseth is said to have shared attack details in second Signal chat. All right, so this one it's so shady and yet so predictable. At the time of the first Signal chat or Signal Gate, okay, I was saying, like, I bet you there's like 30 more. There's gotta be more. If they thought one was like really secure to be like, right? What makes you think there weren't like 30 more? And now we have this. And this is exactly what Amy Klobuchar was talking about, the distraction techniques. But the distraction, Vivian, yes, oh, Mr. Signal, the distractions are so huge that they actually take like priority. This is a big national security issue that he's including his wife on like attack plans. Like, can't you just like, I don't know, keep it to yourself? He just seems like he is so caught up in what he's trying to like accomplish that he has to like blab to like so many people. He doesn't have what it takes to be in this position. And so many people said it when he was being nominated, that he is so underqualified for this position, and it is showing. It is showing. Apparently, there was an article this morning saying that he's already met with Donald Trump, and you know, they're good. It's like, really? Really, you're good? Yeah. We know that you're not. You're not competent. Yes, Kelvin. Yes, he's not competent at all. Vivian, oh, Mr. Signal. I saw somebody call him Whiskey Leaks, and I saw another person call him Hegseth. I was just like, you guys are better than I at the names because I can't. I don't have that kind of wit or humor. Yes, Calvin says he is inept. He is inept. And it's so blatantly out there. So many people know and so many people do nothing. That is the craziest part. Anyways, this was the one that I believe you were talking about. I knew you were talking about the sort of MS-13 tattoos that he has purported to be. Yeah, but just because you have a tattoo doesn't mean anything. All right, so I wanted to bring this one up too. U.S. Supreme Court. This was the one that broke, and they made this decision like overnight. U.S. Supreme, not last night, but I believe like 2 days ago, Supreme Court tells the Trump administration not to take any action to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members currently based in Texas while litigation continues and, quote, until further order of this court. So we'll see if they actually do abide by this order because they don't seem to be doing anything that is according to the law, at least in my opinion. All right, Richard Andrew Crosby says, Hegseth, the DEI hire. Oh, Lord. I know, there's so many things we could be saying. All right, so this is an interesting one. I wanted to bring it up because if you're traveling, this is something that you might want to consider. If you're just joining me on this live, thank you so much for joining me. Drop in the comments where you're joining from, city, state, or country. And then also, feel free to join my Substack. It's free to join, and you can see my Substack lives over there. If you go to the description, I think it's somewhere down in here. It's at the beginning of the description of this live stream, and you can just copy and paste the link into your browser, and you can follow me on Substack. But this is an interesting one. Is it legal for CBP to search your cell phone at the U.S. border? So I wanted to read you what this says. Surprisingly, yes. Under current U.S. policy, CBP officers are allowed to search your electronic devices, including smartphones, laptops, and tablets, without a warrant when you enter the country. While it's rare, it does happen. In fact, some high-profile incidents have sparked growing concern and confusion about what rights travelers really have when crossing the border. And then it goes into this sort of loophole, and I'll get out of the way, the Fourth Amendment, and it's talking about unreasonable searches and seizures, but according to the federal law, they do have this ability to get into your phone. And that raises the question, and I wanted to share with you this, which is France, Denmark, Germany, and Ireland join Canada in urging travelers to use burner phones at U.S. borders amid digital surveillance and detention fears. So if you are traveling, I don't know if you've heard this. Tanuki, hello from Switzerland. How are you? Let me know if you have used a burner phone when you've been traveling. I know that when I've traveled, I think when we went to Japan, we just got a phone when we got there, although I had my own phone, but we just got a phone there and we bought minutes and it was just easy. Some people want to call their carrier like T-Mobile, AT&T, or whatever, Boost Mobile, and change their plan or add additional like countries to their plan when they travel. Tell me what you do in the comments. Do you bring your own phone? Do you buy a burner phone? Do you just add minutes? Or like when we've gone to France, my husband has a French plan just because he talks to his family. But when we've gone, we actually, when we lived there, we were using WhatsApp for a long time because it was just cheap. It was free to do that. But a lot of people want that sort of ability to call or dial or whatever, call an emergency when they're there. But this, knowing that they can take your phone, would you consider using a burner phone? the thing that a lot of people forget is that they're trying to make everything so digital. So what we used to do when we went to the airport is we printed out all of our boarding information, right? And you can still do this. You can, 24 hours ahead of time, you can log in, you can make sure that you're checked in early, and you can actually print out all of your information. How many people still have a home printer? I don't know, because printer ink is really, really expensive. But most people carry their little boarding pass on their phone instead of printing everything out. Do you still print everything out? I'm so curious. Tanuki says, I visited the US many times in the past, will not go for at least the next 4 years. I understand. Sean Kelly Jr., I just switched the SIM cards in my personal phone. Okay, that is definitely one way to do it. You just take out that. I actually had two. So I have an iPhone, and I had two phone numbers. I had my US phone number, I had my French phone number, and I had eSIMs. I had two eSIMs, and I think the next comment says something about eSIMs. For Japan, I just buy an eSIM. See, just came back from this beautiful country 2 days ago. No burner required since nobody will check your phone. Okay, so I don't know if it is arbitrary, if it is just, they're pulling people out of the line and just checking people randomly, or if they're going to start checking people more and more and more, and what they're looking for. I understand that, if you have sentiments against the administration, I have seen stories that one, like, I think French scientist was returned back to France because they looked at his phone and saw some anti-Trump sentiments. He had come here, I believe, for a convention of sorts. I'm not quite sure what they're looking for. But I would just, travel safe, travel smart, especially when other governments are warning their citizens when they travel. Back to the economy. Okay, who has a 401k that is worried? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about the economy. Are you worried? I'm going to write an article. I saw a whole bunch of different people talking about things to look for in a recession. And one of the articles that I'm writing in the middle of writing for Substack is recession hair, and how, I don't know if you can tell, but I colored my hair and it's now grown out to about here. It's red. You can't really tell in this light. And I'm debating on whether or not I'm going to recolor my hair red, because it's expensive to do a whole hair change. And a lot of people, when they do really expensive, like blonde, and having to keep it bleach blonde, especially in the summer, that can get really expensive as well. So recession hair is sort of this idea of doing the minimum to get by during a recession, which means maybe if you were blonde, going back to brunette for a little while, not doing haircuts every 3 months or whatever, making sure that you can cut your own hair, or all the different things, right? So I'm going to be writing about that pretty shortly. Richard Andrew Crosby says, as a U.S. citizen, you have the right to criticize any government official on your phone unless you live in a fascist kakistocracy administrative regime. Thank you. That was very eloquently said. I think that there's a lot going on right now. As far as this sell-off, like I said earlier, I anticipated to do this sort of up, down, up, down, up, down, because that is what Trump's sort of will is. There is no plan, there is no strategy, there is nothing that he can comfort other governments with except chaos. Tanuki says, I just read a story of 2 German teenagers who were detained at the border in Hawaii. The reason, maybe they want to work. Maybe they had to stay in jail for 1 night and flew to Japan the next day. I also read about this. I don't think I have the screenshot of it, but they were detained, and I believe they were put in jumpsuits. They were put in jail. And I understand a lot of, what the border agents are supposed to do is sort of suss out whether or not you are coming here to be a tourist, to visit, or whether or not you want to find work under the table, or, be a nanny, or, and a lot of people come here and they're nannies in legit households, right? They went through an agency and they have all the paperwork done. Some people come and they just offer their services, right? Now, I understand that, trying to suss out who is coming here to sort of visit the sites, right, in Hawaii, to visit Hawaii, and who's coming to, maybe be a summer worker, right? And I'm not quite sure what their determination for these German students were, German teenagers. Um, but maybe part of that was doing their job. But the way that it was handled, the way that I've seen the article seems very concerning, right? It seems like, my God, they put him in jail, like on a suspicion. I don't know. It just seems very, very suspicious. All right. This is something that my mom just sent me not too long ago. Homeland Security, they call her Ice Barbie. I don't know if you've heard this before, but they call her Ice Barbie. Homeland Security Secretary Christine Noem's bag, including $3,000 in cash, is stolen from a DC restaurant. One, why do we have that much cash with us? I don't know anybody who carries that much cash. Like, what are we doing? Are we tipping people? Or are we just not wanting our bill, like at the restaurant, to be like recorded? And so we just are paying in cash. Like, what are we doing? I'm just so confused by this. But this is what she looks like. If you haven't seen her before, she is in commercials talking about you need to self-deport and thank you, President Trump, for doing everything for America. I'm just like, you have drunk the Kool-Aid. All right, Sean Kelly, hope her phone wasn't in her bag. Oh my God. Oh, what if she's on Signal? Oh my God. I hope she has a strong password. Oh my God. I didn't even think about that. You guys are so good. Or any other government issued devices. Tanuki, I can't even read your comment, but I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this. I don't know if she is involved in that, but you guys are on it today. I love it though. I love it. Keep them coming. All right, let's go to this one. A lot of people said the egg prices in the United States were so high. Oh my God, grocery prices were so high. Look at this Easter egg roll with White House Easter egg roll to proceed with thousands of real eggs amid soaring prices. Okay, I believe they were donated from farmers. It says it was hosted by Trump and First Lady Melania. It's going to have 30,000 real eggs or 2,500 cartons donated from America's egg farmers. What do you think about that? That all of these eggs are being used on the lawn, no less, as an Easter egg roll. And the whole American public is like, but my grocery prices, my 401k, and you're over here throwing them on the lawn. I am beside myself because we I think we had 16. We had a carton of 18, but we had used a few, so we colored the 16. I put them out for my daughters to find, and we did an Easter egg hunt at my mom's house, and I immediately put them back in and right back in the refrigerator. They are boiled eggs, and I intend to today make egg salad with these eggs. Like, we are not wasting these eggs. I just can't even fathom. I love how they say donated. Yes, Sean Kelly says donated. Who donates gold? No, you are so right, because the donations that people have been doing, like for the inauguration from all of those tech bros that were standing behind at the inauguration, those are, they're like, how do you say, like, this is like, here, just give me a free pass for just a second. Like, here's some money. In this case, eggs. Here's this. Please, 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 Mr. President, don't tariff me. Don't tax me. Don't come after my business, right? This is the capitulation. This is the form of egg capitulation. It's just, it's really sad. It is really sad. But 30,000 real eggs on the lawn, you guys, on the lawn. So I don't know about you guys, but this has been just a whirlwind of news. And I hope that, oh my God, it's been 45 minutes almost. I hope that you are in a safe place, that, one thing I didn't cover are the protests And you want to know why? They weren't covered by the news. And so I didn't get too many opportunities to screenshot anything. A lot of what I saw of the coverage of the nationwide and even some global protests, the anti-Trump protests, anti-Doge, anti-Elon Musk, anti-all administration protests, those were really on like live streams on TikTok. Those were not really covered. I think a little bit on like MSNBC, but barely made a blip over the weekend. Barely. Not because people weren't there, but because they're not covering it. They are not wanting to do too much to focus on what's really happening in front of the White House, in front of different courthouses, in front of different governor's mansions, in front of all of these different political spaces in every state. They don't want to do that because they know they're going to be the next person at the press conference briefing that says, you know, the president's like, oh, you're fake news. Nobody watches you. You're a failing magazine. You're a failing TV network. You're like CBS. You're like 60 Minutes. You just fake, right? Yeah, they don't want that going out there. And so they're not covering it. But I want you to know, I saw all of the coverage on TikTok. I hope that you did too. If you have a chance, do me a favor and share this video. Like it if you haven't already. If any of this was helpful to kind of run down the news with you. Obviously, it is traumatizing, and I try to bring you the trauma with a smile because there's no other way to kind of get over it, but to just kind of get through it and laugh a little bit, even though we know it is so tragic. So I hope that you enjoyed this. Share it out. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. I know I keep saying this, but I always feel like people don't even, like, they come across it and then they're like, oh my God, I didn't subscribe. So please do that if you have a chance. And I will see you if you are subscribed on my Substack later this evening. Hopefully nothing crazy happens between now and then, but we will chat some more. Vivian, oh, thank you so much. Tanuki says, Switzerland is still doing okay. Fantastic. I still was in awe when I was in Geneva at how many people that we encountered spoke like 4 languages. Like, I think it was, you know, English, Swiss, or Swiss German, French, you know, like, I was in awe. Just the level was very high there. And I was just like, bless you guys, because you are impressive, very impressive. Anyways, I hope that you have a really great Monday, and I will see you guys next time, which is tomorrow. Same time, same place. Bye.